that I am really excited about. So Josh, thanks for being here. We're going to just kind of do a little bit of casual conversation before we really jump into the presentation. Well, we have several participants that have already joined us. So thank you everybody for being here. Brian, Roger, and Ryan, thank you so much. Glad you guys are here and can join us. We are just going to let a couple minutes roll by for those other people that want to jump on can. Josh was just sharing with me a little bit about his ADU. Even though it looks like he's in his ADU, he's not, because it is actually actively is on the market and could be shown at any moment for a renter, right?
Right, exactly. So I got to stay away. I don't want to scare the renters away prematurely.
No, you don't. Which I think is kind of great. So we are recording, so thank you very much for everybody who's here. We do want you to feel free to ask questions for anybody who's joining us and seeing the recording and watching. There's going to be a place where if you want to put a comment on it, whether it is in the How to ADU Facebook group, or it's our YouTube channel, or my YouTube channel, or wherever you're going to find this, put in a comment. And if a question comes up and we don't get to it, or again, like you're watching this as a recording and you didn't have your question answered, a really great place to talk about all things ADU is How to ADU on Facebook. That's a group that was put together by Ryan O'Connell, and I think it's a great venue. We do want to say, a couple of best practices. Again, we're not going to be promoting ourselves. We're not going to be talking about my company or anything that I do professionally. This is meant to be purely educational so that you guys can hopefully get something out of it. For everybody who's here, there is a chat function and there's also a Q&A. So the Q&A is down there. We'd like you to put your questions in there. If we don't get to it, right when you ask it, we may get to it towards the end. So please be patient. At the end of the presentation, we'll open it up for anybody who has questions. So please feel free to throw theirs out there. And so again, we are recording. I don't have to forget that. And before we start, because we're waiting for, I want to do that video again. Is that okay that I did for the promo? Is that all right, Josh?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, great. Let's do that. Let's get over here. And there it is.
Good job.
Stop that other thing right here. Let's get this out. Okay. All right. So I had a lot of fun putting that video together, Josh. Thank you very much for allowing me over to your house. It was fantastic. Let's make sure everything is going good here. So yes, everybody, welcome. Ask a Pro to episode 11. Josh Gould. He is a true do-it-yourselfer. He built his 650 square foot, as you just saw in the video, 650 square feet. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath. You saw how many hours went into it and how much time. So we're going to get into that in a little bit more detail, and I'm going to, as we do, let's start with that PowerPoint that I put together, Josh, that I showed you earlier, and just take people through how it was you started, you conceptualized, and what actually, and I think even in the very, very beginning, you and your wife decided to buy this property with the intent of building the ADU on there.
That's right. That's right. Exactly.
Excellent. So we're going to get into, I'm going to share again, share screen, and share screen. Let's do everything so it's easier for me to get a hold of here and from beginning. Yep, sorry about that, everybody. So when you got into this, you just start, take us through those how everything sort of began.
Well, my wife and I, we started going online and looking at plans that we could find, approximately a 2-bedroom, reasonably sized 2-bedroom, 1-bath design. And because most of them were very similar, there's only so much you can do, with that size. That we found this one that basically looked like the finished product, except I don't think the bathroom and the kitchen were quite aligned back to back. And I wanted to create an efficiency, like mechanical thick wall, to run as much as the electrical and the plumbing and the venting in that wall. So the bathroom and the kitchen kind of are back to back on this extra thick wall. So, after changing a few things on the bathroom and kitchen, we ended up with this plan here. The bedrooms were pretty much the way that you saw, except that I needed to cut and create a 45-degree entry door into bedroom number 2.
The big one?
I don't know why that was labeled bedroom number 2. I consider that the master, whereas bedroom number 1 would be the smaller, extra bedroom. But if you imagined squaring off that door in that kind of central hallway where I have the door at a 45-degree angle for what it says bedroom number 2, if you imagine that squared off, that doesn't leave you much space to get in and out of that hallway, that central hallway, from the rest, the remainder of the area. So I cut that door down and made it a 45-degree entrance door.
Gotcha.
Number 2. So I did that. Made sure that I had egress-sized windows for the bedrooms, of course. The bathroom, I made it a little wider than the actual tub shower width because I liked the room. I wanted more room for not only the toilet and vanity area, but also for a storage cabinet, just a thin one, 12-inch, 1 foot right, that goes right in there. There's never enough storage space or counter space in bathrooms, especially in something this small. So I wanted to create a cabinet, which I did in there. And then I just made the other, from that bedroom 1, I just made a built-in bookshelf there on the back of the tub there.
Gotcha.
The water heater, I was originally planning to go with a smaller standard electrical, like countertop height water heater, and again, an outside access, but I wanted the counter space in the kitchen on top of that water heater. But unfortunately, it doesn't qualify for the compliance
Title 24
calculation, the Title 24 energy use compliance. So I had to go with a taller specialized water heater, the heat pump, which stood tall. So I had to box in that corner into the kitchen, losing that valuable corner counter space in the kitchen there.
Yeah,
But
I think energy requirements for, and I think it's the energy, Title 24 energy efficiency required you to go, is it a 50-gallon electric hot water heater?
actually, it is. It is a 50-gallon.
It's massive. It's overkill because it's the only rated hot water heater that exists for that uses electricity.
That will pass the compliance, the codes. But on the other side of the sword, at least I get a $250 rebate check for actually purchasing that high efficiency water heater. So I get a little something back for doing
Gotcha.
that. And yeah, I mean, I was going to just jump right in rebates, that I get back. But the washer, the high efficiency clothes washer, front loading one, full size, not
Right.
your typical smaller stackable unit in the laundry closet there. I'm getting $85 back on that.
Yeah,
So
and I have pictures of the stackable, and I have pictures
yeah,
of the hot water heater closet. So one of the things that I see a lot of is people ask the question of, "Hey, I have a drawing, but how do I get it in so that I can submit to the jurisdiction that I live?" So
you hire a professional.
you do hire a professional, and that is what this company is, right?
That's right. Um,
You found a design, you gave it to them, and you said, "Get it ready so I can submit it."
to be honest with you, I went with the top of the line, top quality, top dollar construction design company around here. And they basically asked what my project was. I told them, they said, you know what? You're too small and we can't make enough money off you. I'm gonna I'm gonna give you a referral to someone who you might be able to afford. And that's how I ended up with this company here. And to be honest with you, I was very happy with them. I guided them because I'm a particular builder and very micromanagement kind of on the design and stuff. I basically held these guys' hands and gave them weekly informational notes, what to include, what not to include, how to change things. But we worked very well together through the process to get the final plans to the city.
And so for everybody, just a little bit of background, and I apologize, I should have done this earlier. But Josh, could you just share some of your background and experience of what you've done in construction and buildings that you've done?
Well, as a teenager, I worked as a kind of a carpenter's laborer. Um, and then from there, I just went into my own kind of remodeling business, actually a partnership many years ago. And then I moved out of California, went to Montana. I ended up becoming a heating and air conditioning contractor for a while, as well as a carpenter. And then I came back to California and just continued to work in the energy efficiency field of primarily residential buildings and took classes and training and was certified in a lot of different aspects of what goes into creating highly energy efficient residential buildings.
And I think that that's one of the things I was really amazed by, Josh, of when I was here and I was taking these pictures and I was walking this ADU with you, is the incredible attention to detail that you were paying on how you were making everything fit. And I want everybody to kind of understand that Josh is not normal. He's not. I don't. There's very few people that I know that has his level and breadth of understanding about energy efficiency and construction. So, but this is, I think, where if you were going to build your own, do it yourself, you really need to have some background because, as Josh just mentioned, he was reviewing the plans and giving sort of comments back to the is it an engineering firm or was it just a
Well,
draftsman?
it was a draftsman
Okay.
who worked with an architectural firm and had the connection of the engineer to
Gotcha.
go over the load specifications and calculations for that.
So yeah, so
So
Josh really does know his stuff, and we're gonna dive into a little bit of what went into his ADU to make it. Is it? I know I kind of coined the phrase hyper energy efficient.
I
I mean,
like that.
currently right now it's a net zero. You're
That's
gonna
right.
really find out if it is once you get that renter in there
That's
and
right.
get it. But share with us what we're looking at. So right now I'm standing in just the entryway and living room, looking at the panel.
That's right.
This is also the a component of the mini split or the cassette, and it's going to be in the ceiling, and this is the cover for it. So share with us
Right.
what we're looking at.
That's right. Well, if you see the electric panel there, the sub panel or distribution panel, is inside on the living room wall. Um, and the reason I came up through the slab with the conduit and the supply wire from the main panel outside in the corner, I wanted to come in again centrally located to keep my at least big, heavy, expensive wire runs as short as possible. So the kitchen is just to the left, out of screen, out of that shot. So the heavy wires from, that operate the all electric stove and oven, very short distance. The water heater is just on the other side of the kitchen from that wall. But Yeah, so I'm kind of a nut when it comes to my wiring. I kind of am very careful and do it very nicely so that you can actually tell what wire goes to what circuit breaker without getting electrocuted if you ever needed to service and maintain. But I wanted to point out something on the top of that electrical panel where the wires are coming through the top plate in the framing. Those little white puffs are actually foam sealant, air sealant foam, spray foam. And that is one of the critical aspects that you need to do with every penetration, everywhere, in every wall, in every ceiling, and every floor, if you're going to even have a hope at approaching a very airtight building, which is truly one of the biggest priorities for accomplishing a building, net zero building,
Well,
air seal.
you need to come out and see ours because we're about to get ready.
All right, I can consult. Yes. So the cassette unit, as you pointed out, up in the ceiling between the ceiling joists there, it was made. It's manufactured to fit in between 24-inch center framing there. And what you're seeing is a piece of cardboard coming from the actual delivery box. And I've taped it up there, or I've held it up there over the actual unit so no dust and debris actually can get into the fan unit, which is behind the cardboard. And of course, the cover, which you pointed out, sitting in the linen closet down there, will go on only after all the drywall sealing is put on and finished.
Gotcha. This is the studs, and again, you're using the spray foam
Yes.
in the gaps.
Yes. Every gap, every possible airspace. And the reason why it's important to cut down the air sealing is poorly insulated walls or unsealed insulated walls between the studs and the sheathing and the finished siding. If you create air currents in there, they would be considered convective air currents, and it would actually transfer heat either away from the building or into the building unless you get it air sealed. So I used the foam spray gun between the studs and the backside of the sheathing, as well as in between every stud that's connected. Because if there was some air leakage happening in one air cavity between two studs, at least it'll be stopped and limited within that one bay and not be able to travel from one cavity to the other cavity and create all kinds of inefficiency.
And here's just a little further perspective. You can see again the spray foam between this sheathing here and the studs, and in between the studs themselves. But this, I don't think I'd ever seen this before. So
no, that I created that. I made that up during the planning stage. What I wanted to do is, one of the most inefficient parts of a building is out at the exterior wall, where you have a rafter angled, cut down, bird's tail cut, sitting on the top plate of the exterior wall, creating only 1 or 2 inches worth of insulation power. And that is terrible, because you end up putting vents in there, and then that sets up convection air currents, and it robs, it either delivers heat or takes heat away right in that area really badly. So what I wanted to do here is run some ceiling joists, full height, 12-inch 2x12 ceiling joists on 24-inch center on top of the exterior walls. Okay. And then I created a attic floor plywood storage platform above. And then I laid down 2x4s to act as my rafter plates, on top of there. So I fill this entire cavity with insulation right to the very end of the exterior wall. Well, I have to provide venting into the attic space in theory. So I use ductwork to take a corner from the ceiling joist area and opened up the ductwork above the plywood there. So I don't have outside air interacting with my attic or ceiling insulation at all. So I don't have convective air currents robbing that. So that's one of the high efficiency, but it costs more to do it that way.
Sure.
I wanted to do it.
And this is a thing that I know that some people might not have seen, but this is an air exchanger, and it's a simple device. This, you have it done. One of the reasons is that the house is so tight. You actually put this into the attic space, and so that it pulls the old stale air that is inside, pulls it out, and then brings in the fresh air and puts it inside the ADU. But they actually cross, so
That's
that
right.
whatever temperature is leaving the house is the ADU is interacting with the outside temperature and trying to bring that outside air temperature closer to what is inside.
That's right. Yeah, there is some efficiency lost. It's not 100% transfer. It's just, the way things are as far as research development at this stage. But it's about somewhere in the high 70s, low 80s% of that heat during a cold winter is maintained or retained in the heat exchanger in that box. And that cold, fresh air coming into that box picks it up at about 78 to 84% efficiency, and then can deliver that pre-warmed fresh air into the living rooms and bedrooms, while it's exhausting the hot, stale, nasty odor air and humid air from the bathroom and the kitchen.
Right.
So that's exhausting. Let's see. Is that from the bathroom? I think that's the exhaust duct pulling air from the bathroom down below into the
Gotcha.
box to the
But
left.
you have a pretty good amount of attic space here. I was
I,
surprised.
I really do. I really do. And I don't know if you can see the strip lighting there attached to that big beam. I've got lighting like that, LED strip lighting like that throughout the attic. So, and there's a switch right when you crawl up there, at the entrance. So you can store your Christmas decorations and other holiday things and other stored stuff up there.
Right. One of the things I also thought was interesting is you had to get a temporary power pole for your construction.
That's something that goes in the very first part of when you're looking at the proposed building site is you got to go, well, how am I going to get utilities from point A to point B? And as it turned out, there was a very long wire run from the other side of the alley and back of the house all the way through the property, the backyard, and then um, to the main panel of the existing house, and it cut right across the roof line of where the ADU needs to be built. So that was one of the more expensive things that honestly I didn't estimate correctly as far as cost. So it's good to catch these things up front before you get started and you go, oh no.
No, I know, and that's we're gonna just so everybody who's with us and those who are watching this the recording, we're gonna go over that line by line item breakdown that Josh provided, and so you're gonna see where he actually overestimated and underestimated, and also the total. I thought this was a good picture. You can kind of see it before the landscaping is all done and finished, and the fencing is in. Really nice look. Horizontal lap siding. I think the colors of the shingles are great. They're not too dark to retain a lot of heat. And also, I want to point out, did you purposely go with these size windows in this area, a little bit smaller, or were they like, hey, this is just what fits? Or was it, I like them this size to really keep out any sunlight for coming into, and just to make the ADU more energy efficient?
I pretty much just thought that I would throw these sizes at the plans and at the draftsmen and see what they thought. And they came back with the same type of windows, and they said, yeah, it works great, looks great. We had to go a little smaller, I think, on to the left corner there for the kitchen one is the first one next to the corner. Then there's the water heater outside access, vented door or louvered door, and then there's the bathroom one there. But now this is interesting because the bathroom window is actually in a tiled shower, and if I had the window 1 or 2 inches lower in the wall, it would have had to been by code a tempered glass. But because it was 60 inches or taller in the shower and of that size, I wasn't required to have it tempered. But tempered glass is something that you have to look at as far as being low to the ground by either entrance or exit doors and or near water, being a shower or bathtub or whatever. So that was one thing to consider there. But yeah, pretty much the sizes of the windows were the same, what I thought.
Okay, thank you for that. This is something that I've not seen very often.
Okay, this is actually for a few years now has become very popular because studies have shown if you do this manifold design, they call it, rather than a tree trunk and limbs emanating from one branch or one main line, you get hot water delivery much more efficiently and quickly. This is my actual first use of creating copper manifolds and valving each and every water fixture in the house separately, and then using the plastic, what they call PEX plumbing, PEX tubing. So I've got red tubing, which is hard to see for the hot water lines, and blue PEX tubing for the cold water lines. But each and every water fixture has its own shutoff valve, so that if there's an issue of servicing required or repair, you don't have to shut off water to the whole house. You just go to the next sink that still has the water on. You can isolate that one fixture that needs maintenance.
Well, I thought this was brilliant. It's a great idea. I love the concept, and it looks as good in person as it does in this
Yeah,
picture. Everything
but
is just very nicely laid out, and so you can see the attention to detail that Josh brought to his project. Did you do this yourself, or did you have somebody do all these solder joints?
oh no, I'm a solderer. I like to do the plumbing and I like to do the
That was
electrical. Yeah, I
impressive.
do it all.
So
If
here's
you,
here's the beast.
yes,
This is the beast, and I call it the beast because it's 650 square feet, 2 bedroom, 1 bath, and this
that's
is a
right.
50-gallon
Yeah,
electric heat pump water heater.
right. But, again, I want to say you get some money back to about $250 if you go through the rebate qualifications. And I think everywhere in California, they certainly will give you money back as long as you got your receipt and the model number and stuff like that, your invoice.
I
Um,
call it the beast because what the other option that does meet Title 24 currently is those gas
on demand,
instant hot
indirect. Yeah,
water heaters that are just they're maybe 1/20th the size and probably half or a third of the cost.
yeah, yeah.
And that is the one that means which so there's this big discrepancy if you wanting to go all electric and stop using
Natural
fossil
gas.
fuels
Yes.
and you want to go as green as possible. It is with this particular function within an ADU, heating the water, you really don't have a choice if you
No,
want to do that. You're going to be using this big monster, and it's
that's right.
taking up a lot of square footage, particularly if it's under 500 square feet. I think that you shouldn't have a T24 requirement if it's under 500 square feet. You should be able to do whatever you want.
Well, within limits. I mean, but as far as, there needs to be some. I know 500 square feet doesn't seem like a lot, but there needs to at least be like insulation and maybe some double pane window requirements. I'm not so sure about mechanical systems because it's such a small area and your water needs are so small.
Yeah,
It may
yeah.
not be a big deal.
Somebody just asked the
Um,
question, will this be recorded and posted? Yes, it will be recorded. It is being recorded, and it will be posted at the How to ADU Facebook page for the media. And then you got to dig down and you got to find the Ask a Pro file. It'll also be on my YouTube channel, and then I can't say it, but it'll be on my company's YouTube channel. And then with hopefully within a couple weeks, maybe a month at the very outset, once we get done with post production. Labels on your meter panels. You have
that's right.
everything nicely done. Again, this is an all electric ADU.
That's right. That's right. After doing the electric load calculation, still 100 amp main panel or sub panel in this case is plenty big to feed all the requirements, according to the calculations. Now, one thing that's important, I think, in most areas, if not all areas now, are the use of what they call arc fault
Yes.
circuit breakers, circuit interrupters. And if you look, I don't know if you can see the little blue buttons on all the individual 110, 120 volt lines. They're all arc fault protected. And those are some expensive circuit breakers. You can buy a normal circuit breaker for, I don't know, $6, $8, $10, $12. But these guys run from what, $35 to $45 each. So again, plan for the costs.
And what is the purpose of the arc fault breaker?
I guess it's another level, a level of safety where if there's arcing detected, meaning there wants to be a short, um, it goes back to the panel and grounds safely and flicks the switch so that it doesn't burn up the house. Basically,
Gotcha.
it's kind of a new version of the GFCI, the ground fault circuit interrupter breaker.
Got it. And this is which I think was really fantastic, is you do have a full-size washer and dryer, and you built this space really great. It's very tight to get things in. And am I correct? Do I remember that you actually have access to the backs of these, of the washer and dryer behind the refrigerator?
That's right. Behind the refrigerator is the access panel, 14-inch by 14-inch metal gray painted door that hinges open, and you can do all your electrical hookups and your hot and cold water hookups, the wastewater drain hookups, the big plug-in for the 220-volt dryer, that being electric also. So one thing you'll notice is there's a vent cut into the bifold door. Again, a dryer exhausting air, exhausting the heated, moist, humid air from the wet clothes, needs a source, an input source, because it's expelling, going out up the dryer vent, through the ceiling into the attic and out the sidewall, gable wall. So with the bifold doors closed, technically the calculation said I needed to provide additional air into that confined closet. So I put a bunch of vents in the door.
And this is something you just did on your own. You bought the bifold doors, and then you cut in these vents.
That's right.
I think it's fantastic.
But here's the reality, David, and I've thought about it, and I wish I would have done something separate. And that is, if I'm trying to maintain kind of an air balance, neutral balance of air tightness in the entire ADU, any exhausting device without incoming air to replace it is going to be a pull and create really intense negative pressures throughout the whole ADU. Now, luckily, there's no gas burning appliances, natural drafting gas burning appliances. If there was a typical gas water heater, which had the draft hood on top of the vent, it would pull carbon monoxide gases right into the house in a minute with the dryer on. That's how airtight this place is. It would kill you, basically. So I wish I would have had an air duct going up into the attic and out to the sidewall just to pull in what I call makeup air. So when the dryer is operating within that closet, it can actually pull outside air through the ductwork into that little closet and then exhaust it through the dryer with the hot, humid, exhausting vent. And then I wouldn't have had to worry about vents in the door at all, because it would have its own dedicated air source, incoming and exhausting, into that closet.
Wow, that's a really, really good point. I know that we are just at 2:40. There's going to be some questions, and I know we're going to definitely ask them. Roger, you got a couple good ones in there right now. This is the condenser unit of the mini split that you have inside the ADU.
Right.
And is there a reason why you went with Mitsubishi over any others?
From companies I've worked in the past, we really liked two brands specifically, Fujitsu and Mitsubishi. And I picked this one solely based on price as well as the SEER rating, seasonal energy efficient rating, very high, or what I would consider high, over 20,
Gotcha.
which is good, and a reasonable price.
Good. And here's the what I kind of call the, or would you call this into the heart of the house, where you, when it regards to the power, because you have your meter, and you also have your solar components that are here. Can you share with us exactly what we're looking at?
Yeah, well, the tall one with the meter obviously is the main metered, main electrical service entrance to the house from above. The pole, yeah, the galvanized pole from above, overhead, goes into the box basically and distributes to the different circuits on the right hand side of those double doors. But really, mostly what it's there for is to act as the main panel before it splits up into two sub panels. One to feed the ADU in that living room wall we saw in the beginning. That's one of two sub panels. The main house still needs to get its power from this 200 amp main. So there's a conduit going all the way underneath the ground, all the way to the original placement of the panel on the main house. So there's a sub panel now 100 amp that feeds the main house also.
And you chose to just keep
Also,
one. You could have put two meters on there. You just chose to do one.
I chose to do one because after consulting with the city of Laverne, if I went strictly with separate accounts and separate utilities for water, gas, electric, etc., I would have had to pay much more development fees as opposed of just connecting on to an existing account or calling it master metered the account. So I chose to do it this and save myself several $1,000s up front with the permitting process. Now I have two solar systems going back into this main panel. What you see, the two boxes, one larger square box and the one smaller gray box, that's coming from the roof solar panels on the ADU. And this is the thing that says end phase, the bigger of the two boxes, what they call a combiner, because I have the micro inverters attached to each individual solar panel up on the roof there. And the combiner does exactly what it sounds like. It combines all the power from the micro inverters. Now, there also needs to be, code requires a shutoff, an AC disconnect is what the smaller box is there. So that is a manual pull handle that disconnects. And the reason why is, think about the safety issue. If you're going to do work on the main panel, you can shut the main power off from above that you're getting from Edison. But keep in mind, the solar panels are producing electricity and shoving that into the power panel, and you could get electrocuted there. So you need means of shutting off all power sources, whether it be solar panels or from the grid, from the utility.
Gotcha.
So yeah, lots of safety devices going on there.
So here we are. This is your completed ADU.
Yeah.
You got your landscaping in.
Yep.
Those of us who watched the beginning, and I did the video kind of drone shot, you can see that the landscaping is really beautiful. And what you're standing on, you went with decomposed granite. Is that correct?
That is correct. Some people call it DG.
DG. No, I think that's really great. And it's all drought tolerant. And you actually were able to get another set of rebates. And with this drawing, and by going in, so talk to us about this process.
Yeah, I'm in an area where the Metropolitan Water District supplies water to different municipalities and cities in the area here. And so they have an ongoing $2 per square foot turf removal rebate program. Now, I took advantage of this years ago in another house in Glendale, and it worked really well. But in this case, not only did I have to come up with a kind of a scale drawing plot plan of how showing the landscaping, showing the hardscape surfaces, the areas that I needed to subtract from the project area, and showing plants, and a rain barrel was included as part of the qualifications. One minimum sized 50-gallon rain barrel is required, as well as downspouts and rain gutters on all the slopes or the eaves of the roof edges in the project area. So I threw this together after talking with a landscape contractor, and submitted this with a proof of my copy of my water bill. And I just got approval the other day. They finally got back to me after a month of hemming and hawing and saying, no, send us another bill. Something's wrong here and this and that. So I jumped through some hoops, but because it's going to add up to over $5,000. Because I think if you look on here on the plan, it'll say the qualifying project area, net area, is 2,859 square feet. Multiply that by $2.
And that's your total rebate.
And that's my total rebate.
Well, Vicky, my wife Vicky, and I are going to go all drought tolerant.
Ooh.
We just met with our landscaper, and oh my goodness, is it going to be expensive? We're going to talk about that in a second. And I'm just hoping that the city of Burbank has a turf removal rebate, because we're taking away quite a bit too. I don't know if it's going to be near 3,000 square feet, but it's going to be a lot. We are going to get to the point where we're going to jump into the line items of the cost. I know that there was a question from Roger, and let's see. As fundamental as it sounds to ask, my question is: assuming the decision to build an ADU in the backyard is a go, so they want to do it, and assume the space is fine, and the utilities are workable, what are the first 3 or 4 steps, and in what order to do them? For example, does the architectural plan come first, and then ask the jurisdiction for approval, or are there some other steps? I think that's Roger's. I guess his property's ready. He wants to do it.
Hey, Roger's really close. However, there was great benefit to talk with the city first, because cities or jurisdictions have a set of standards or procedures that they're going to make you follow first. So by getting those up front free, and talking with the planning department or the building, whatever, community development, whoever's in charge of that, talk with the city first about your idea. They're going to give you what not to do, what to do, paperwork, fees. You'll be able to get a more realistic idea of what kind of fees they're going to require. And then I talked with the utility, the electric utility, saying, hey, what have I got to do here? I know the power line is right in the middle of my construction zone. What's it going to take to move it? Power poles, stuff like that. Give me some information there. So those 2 that I talked with were very helpful. And then I could go with that information and my plans to a designer or the draftsman or the architect and say, hey, these are the requirements. Are you familiar with them or not? You got to build these in, or consider this as the planning process takes hold or fruition.
So what Josh is saying is, like, there is a lot of things to think about and processes to kind of consider and how they all work. So yeah, going to the city first, bringing everything to the architect or the designer, and making sure that person, that company, is familiar with your jurisdiction's requirements. If they're not, then you got a lot more work on your hands to be able to kind of really follow things. there was also the question from Roger, what about fire sprinklers? I mean, even though the main house, yours does not have them, so by code, your ADU was not required to have them. If your main house had fire sprinklers, then the ADU would very likely be required to have that one. But just
That's
in general,
yeah.
what are your thoughts
Yeah.
on fire sprinklers?
Yeah, I like the idea of fire sprinklers for saving the neighborhood, but basically your house is going to be ruined
Yeah,
whether they're used or not. But there's all kinds of bells and whistles and horns that are set off electrically with a flow switch once those fire sprinklers are going to warn the entire neighborhood, hey, your house is going down, but I'm going to protect mine.
good.
but
We do
but
have
but
just under 10 minutes left, and I do want to kind of share everybody. If you're going to take a screenshot of anything, this would be the time before the recording is posted, because I have not seen a more concise representation of the costs that go into an ADU. And before we dive into this, which just was some of the highlights, because we don't have enough time to go line by line.
right.
But you starting with the fact that you and your wife looked for this property with the intent that you were going to put an ADU on the back.
Mm-hmm.
So you purchased. Did you? Was it after you purchased the home that you started, getting things ready for the design, or did you
Yeah.
start looking at the design before you even closed escrow?
Oh, I went to the city first and I said, what are your feelings on ADU? Give me all the information you got
Before you made an offer.
before I even bought the house. Yeah.
Okay, and
I mean, because this kind of ties in with the whole thing, really.
right. And how long from the time that you closed escrow, I mean, that you submitted for your permits? Because we're going to talk. We've already shared that it took you 1 year, 9 months of construction,
Yeah.
4,000 hours, man hours to build it. But how much time did you have in the permitting and design phase?
Oh, it seemed like a year, if not more, because COVID threw everything into disarray. It probably extended the waiting period and the hassle so much more than it normally would have. Before COVID hit, the city of Laverne said, yeah, there's a 10-day turnaround between your plan submittal and either approval or correction notice. Yeah, that 10 days went into like 6 months because of COVID hit.
So with COVID, and yes, it's messed up everything. You were probably 2 years, 10 months, 2 years, just under three.
Yeah,
Get it done.
pretty
Some of
much.
what are the big highlights out of this? What we're looking at as far as the cost? What are the big things that jumped out to you that you're like, hey, I was able to save a couple bucks, and then, oh my goodness, that was underestimated.
I think if you look there, concrete was huge. I did not expect that. Um, Also, I way underestimated, I think, all the electrical costs. And also, the biggest single thing was landscaping. I had no idea what I was doing with my landscaping estimate. I just assumed it was somewhere in the ballpark neighborhood of my last landscaping, which was way smaller than this one and several years ago. And I didn't have any idea what I was getting into.
Right, and yeah, it is a big thing. One of the things, so you can, and for again, for everybody who's watching this, when you do it, when you're doing it yourself, that does not mean that you have to pour your concrete foundation and put your hold down bolts. So here's where Josh says he hired it out, and so you can see all in the green. That's where he did it himself. So the rough plumbing, he had some folks come in, countertops, had them come in. Landscaping, solar panels, put that in, and the architectural design, obviously. And those are the sections that he hired out or acted as a owner builder. But he's coordinating and bringing everybody kind of under one roof. So here's at the bottom. It may be hard to see, but the total that it cost you was $145,555. And you underestimated by just below 21,000.
Mm-hmm.
And
Now,
again,
that also doesn't figure in all the rebates and deductions we can take off that 145,555 also.
Yeah, and I just want to kind of stop sharing because the recordings happen, the screen is really big and we're in tiny little squares up above. And this is a little bit easier. You're very welcome, Ryan. Let's see, some of the kind of thoughts that you would share for people who are looking at doing an ADU themselves, just like Roger asked, where do you start? Starting with the city, finding out what the requirements are, finding a good architect, designer to kind of build out all of the code requirements, which I think is critical. What other things would someone who's brand new to this, what would you recommend they kind of be prepared for?
Well, I think you really, to consider this seriously, you need someone on your team, whether it's friend, relative, acquaintance, who really kind of is familiar with the construction, familiar with terminology, tools, how things are put together. The more experience that you have, the less surprises you're going to come up against. I'm not going to say you're going to eliminate surprises altogether. That's just the nature of the beast, so to speak. It's just limiting them to minimal as much as possible by experienced people on your team.
Yeah, no, I would agree, and I think that there's some folks that are out there that say that you can really do it for X number of dollars per square foot, and I think that really is a tough thing to say because it puts in the minds of people that don't know how they're going to approach their ADU project of, oh, I'm going to be paying too much if I'm getting close to $300 a square foot. It should be $150 a square foot. So those per square foot costs are really not a good indicator in my opinion, because if you're going to go hyper energy efficiency, you're adding cost just in the particular materials that you're using and how much time you're spending filling in all of those particular gaps. And also it's the time, and I want to kind of get us close on this. And I posted this question, is like, what is your time worth and how do you kind of factor that in? You put in over 4,000 hours of your own personal time, and you worked, if I remember correctly, basically almost 6 days a week for that year and 9 months. You woke up, worked all day for 6 days a week for a year and 9 months. And
that's right.
So if you factor in what your time is worth, I mean, we had the conversation when I visited and did that drone shot, and if you valued it at, what was it? What did we figure, $40 an hour?
Well, it's relative to, if I was to work for a contractor doing that or something, yeah, I would get close to 35, 40 an hour. However, the love of labor and the knowing that ultimately it adds to the value of the property regardless of what it costs, to a certain degree, and the love of it, I figure I probably am somewhere in the $15 to $20 an hour range within reason. I don't know. That's usually maybe $350 a square foot for a highly customized, hyper energy efficient building, top of the line quality. I'd be lucky to get $20 an hour if we ran the numbers.
Yeah, and so it is. How much time do you have to put into this? A do-it-yourself project like Josh is a full-time job for almost 2 years. If you're doing it truly all yourself, if you have family that's supportive of your efforts, because you may not have the skills that Josh does, and it is unusual that we're able to talk to somebody like him who not only has building skills, but also the energy efficiency. Like, just seeing how you can kind of close those gaps in between the sheathing and the studs themselves and the special customization, I think is really, really unique. Thank you, Josh, for your time today. I really do appreciate it. Thank you, everybody who's with us watching. We really appreciate your participation. And again, if you're watching this recording, thank you for taking the time to be with us. If you have any questions for myself or for Josh, because I know how to get a hold of him and I know where he lives, just let us know. We're going to be happy to help you with your ADU project because we want more housing in California.
Yes.
It's going to be a wonderful thing. Josh, thank you again. Thank you,
Yes,
everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Y'all
Bye.
take care. All right,
Bye.
bye-bye.